All right, welcome everybody to this month's Tuesday Talks. I'm Jessica Rosenblatt. I am the Executive Director of the Ohio Arts Professionals Network, and I am so thrilled to have, I would like to call him my great friend, Kevin Peters. Kevin has been a conference co-chair for OAPN in the past. He has presented this NAPAMA session for the past few conferences as well. It was a huge hit at the 2024 conference in Toledo, and so we wanted to bring Kevin back to host his presentation for one of our Tuesday talks so that we could record it and put it out in the world. Kevin Peters is an agent with GL Berg Entertainment, and I will let him give a little bit of more insight into his background and what he does. But Gary Berg, the owner of GL Berg Entertainment, has also run a three-part series on when you need your own agent, how to make $100,000, and another topic. So we have all of these recorded to our Tuesday Talks playlist on our YouTube channel, just Ohio Arts Professionals Network. So feel free to give those a watch. And I am going to pass this baton over to the wonderful Kevin Peters to kick off this Tuesday Talks session.
Cool. Yes, you may call me a good friend, Jessica. Doesn't
Great
cost
friend.
anything.
One of the best, one of the best.
Well, thanks for joining, and if you're not joining and watching this, thanks for watching it later. So this session came about really because we realize there's a lot of agencies and agents that don't understand or don't realize or haven't been aware that or had a need for anything other than a guaranteed fee. There's lots of different ways to structure deals, and especially after COVID, we found that there are a lot of presenters, a lot of theaters that are risk averse. They can't take a risk where, so the artist couldn't get in there at a $10,000 guarantee, but maybe at a $5,000 guarantee they could. And is there additional potential there to earn more? So these deals have existed forever. I am by no means an expert on them. I have done a lot of different ones here. So this will be part math and part learning on the different ways to create these deals and working collaboratively with the venue in sharing in the profits, quite frankly. So to get started on some of these, we need to kind of just go over some basic terms and just some basic math that we'll use throughout every example. And the first thing with a lot of these deals we need to look at is in the venues we'll look at is what is your gross potential. This means essentially looking at your seating capacity and your ticket pricing and adding it all up. So in the example we're working with here, we're going to go with 1,000 seating capacity. And you can see it broken down into tier one, tier two, and tier two, which should be tier three. So there's just notice the typo there. Um, in those tiers, you'll notice if you look at the price category, really tier one, tier two, tier three means your different price structures. So tier one is generally always your highest price, tier two, tier three, and it can continue on beyond that. So in this particular example, 600 of the 1,000 seats are being sold at $20 a ticket, which gives $12,000 revenue. As tier one is only 100 seats at $50 a ticket, so that gives $5,000 revenue. So at sellout of 1,000, you add all of this up, and the gross potential that the theater is going to be able to take in for ticket sales is $26,000. So this is just, we're going to keep all the numbers the same here so we can work the deals and see different ways that the artists and venues can walk out. Now, that was gross sales. Now we talk net gross potential, which means what's actually going to be there after sales tax and facility fee. These are generally always taken out of the gross sales before there's anything to share with people. So if you look here, we had our gross potential of $26,000. The facility fee in this case is $3.50 per ticket. So our sellout is 1,000 tickets. So at sellout, that's $3,500. And then you take, we're again just using 8% tax. So then all of a sudden you have an additional, $5,000 just over that for expenses. So you have your net potential, which was the $26,000. We took away our facility fees out of there that the venue has to pay per ticket, and we took out the tax. So that now leaves us with a gross potential to share among everyone of $20,420. And that's going to be the pot of money we use in these different deals. So whoops. When you're talking about split deals, this is not things with bonuses. When you're talking about split deals, a lot of times you're going to get a budget with expenses. And these expenses are things that definitely need to be agreed upon. Some of them are fixed expenses. Some of them we consider variable expenses. The fixed expenses are things that are set, like rent. A lot of venues, the promoters need to rent the hall. That is a set price. It is fixed. Labor costs. That is a fixed expense that's going to be figured out based on your tech rider. So if your tech rider says you need 6 stagehands, 2 riggers, a light tech, all this, the venues are going to budget for that. So if your tech rider is not accurate, you're going to be putting more expenses into this show that come out of any potential gross that could go towards you as an artist. So if you know your tech rider says you need 6, but you always only have 4, this would be a good time to update your tech rider so it's accurate, so your expenses are accurate. So again, sound and lights, front of house staff, things like that. Those are fixed expenses. What is variable is some of these things here because it depends on the number of people that come. You know, credit card fees. If you only have 100 people showing up, then it's the credit card fees of only 100. ASCAP BMI insurance is all based on ticket sales as well. So these things vary depending on your ticket sales. When you're looking at a venue budget, they'll be giving it to you as a sellout expense. So those three really are the popular ones that can vary. So this is all just kind of some groundwork on the expenses that the venue has, just a very high overview that we need to consider as artists and agents as we are creating these deals. Um, so what are the different type of deal options? We'll kind of go through these one by one. The first one is simply a door deal. The presenter and the artist share the profits. There is no guarantee for the artist. It is simply a door deal. There's no guarantee. Whatever comes in, comes in. There's different ways of creating it. You can say 85% of net revenue or 85% of the gross box office, that $26,000 fee, less approved fees, taxes, or just, 85%, no guarantee type of thing. So, let's do some calculations. We're going to call this an 85% door deal of the net less the expenses that we just showed on the previous slide. So if you remember, our net gross potential on this 1,000-seat theater after we took out the facility fee and sales tax, the net was $20,420. We're going to take out our fixed expenses and our variable expenses, which is all the math is shown right here. That leaves you with a net of $11,420 at sellout to share. In this particular deal, we did 85% goes to the artist. So 85% of 11,420 is $9,707. So as an artist, if you sell out this venue on an 85% door deal, you are going to walk out with $9,707. You can change the percentages. That's all negotiable stuff. Some of the expenses could be negotiable in there, but that can change. So some of these happen from $1, which means your percentage is literally from the first dollar sold. Some people will do a door deal after the venue gets a certain amount of money. It's the same type of thing though, where there's no guarantee. It's not maybe as risky if you know you're going to sell tickets because you're making money from that first dollar. But do keep in mind always facility fee and sales taxes are always going to be taken out before that pot of money that can be shared is going to be there. Here's another one of that now looking at from $1. So now we don't need to, we're not going to worry about the fixed and variable expenses such as labor and lights and credit card fees and all that. The only thing here from a $1 deal that we're taking out is the facility fee and taxes. So this deal, whoops, this deal is 60% of net from $1. So you start with your net, same numbers we always have had, 20,420. You don't need to worry about expenses. You simply take 60% of that and you're walking out at sellout with $12,252. So in this example, if you know you're going to be able to move 1,000 tickets, a 60% deal from $1 is actually going to net you as an artist more than an 85% deal with expenses included in there. So it's important to know the math because you might look and see 60%. No, I want the 85% deal. But it's important to know what's involved in there. So like again, in this case, it's an easy settlement. You don't have to worry about expenses. So why do a door deal? Sometimes it's the only way in the hall. Smaller clubs, things like that, that's just all they do. You and again, this deal, especially from $1, there's little risk for the presenter because they start making money from $1, you start making dollar money from $1. So a lot of why we do these deals is to lower that risk threshold for the venue so they feel more comfortable with you coming in. Um, you do have to rely on the success of a date without a guaranteed payoff. So keep that in mind. If you're again confident in your sales, it can do it, then great, you can take care of it. So door deals are generally considered high risk, high reward. Um, for that reason, because if you don't sell, there's no guarantee to fall back on. So it takes a lot of confidence in yourself and your marketing and what you have. So things to be mindful of, like I just said, confident you can do well. Be aware of the risk. You don't have that guarantee. Monitor your ticket sales. Make sure you're getting ticket reports so you know and you can step in when things aren't going well. And in all of these deals that do include expenses, look at them and again, do the math diligently. Is what's in your rider really needed? Is the venue budgeting $2,000 for hospitality, but you're in your hometown and you don't need that? That expense can then go out, and then that's $2,000 more back to the pot of money to share. So, taking a look at those expenses certainly is a good thing. Um, before you accept on the offer, agree on the expenses. Again, that's an important part of the math, of course, always in here. And then the last thing, the easiest way to affect your walk essentially is ticket pricing. So yeah, if you want to make more money, you can raise that ticket price to $100, $150, and $200. But if you're not going to sell any, it's not doing you any good. If you're so far out of the norm for the market, it's not going to do you any good. So take a look obviously at that ticket pricing and make sure that you are in line with the market, in line with your other shows, and don't just get greedy because you see that potential big number there on the bottom, because you still need to sell tickets to get there. All right, so that's kind of the door deal. Now we get into some of these split deals with bonuses and verses and things like that. So we're going to talk first here about a versus deal. What is it? So in these deals, you do have an artist guarantee. So you can get that, or you get a percentage of the net, and it's always whichever is greater. So some examples given here, you can see, versus $85,000 guarantee versus 85% of the net revenue. Some of them have less expenses, all those types of things. Again, the expenses uh, will play into this, and you'll see that very clearly here. So when you're working these deals, you want to make sure that your guarantee that you're looking at is going to cover your daily expenses. Because again, that might be higher than 85% of the net. So, if you know your daily expenses are around $5,000, and let's start with that $5,000 guarantee. That way your expenses are covered for the day, but the potential is there because you're going to sell. So in this type of a deal, we're doing $5,000 guarantee versus 85% of the net less the expenses. So if you look at the math here, again, our net, you've got just a reminder again, the facility fee and sales taxes are out. Then you've got those fixed expenses we saw, the labor, the lights, all that stuff, the variable expenses, the credit card fees, ASCAP, BMI, insurances come out of that net. So here's the math of that. Your net minus those expenses leaves us again with the $11,420 left to share. 85% of that is $9,707. So if you sold out this venue on a deal of the $5,000 guarantee versus the 85%, you're going to walk out with $9,707. So as it says here, contrary to the door deal, you do have that guarantee to fall back on. In the event it totally bombs, you put the show in the wrong market, they weren't marketing it well, whatever, marketing budget ran out, 20 people show up, you're still, as an artist, walking out with $5,000. So this is, again, banking on your ability to sell tickets. Why choose a versus deal? If the potential of the show, the potential gross is high, you deserve, as an artist, deserve a share of that. And the venue also deserves a share of that to make their money and break even so they can continue presenting shows. By lowering the guarantee, adding a percentage where you could walk out with more, maybe that's the way you get this deal done. Maybe they're finally like, okay, I can see losing $5,000. A venue might say, I can see, taking a risk on $5,000 here, but they're not going to take the risk on $10,000. But if you do this deal that we did 5,000 versus 85, you're almost at 10K. So it's just, again, playing with the numbers, playing with the risk, banking on yourself. Um, and we kind of went over this, talking again about the ticket sales and stuff. So now we get to a plus deal. And instead of versus, now we're adding on top. So it's a guarantee plus a percentage after a previously agreed upon split point. And we'll cover some terminology here in just a little bit. But a couple examples, 5,000 plus 50% after expenses, or then we get into here these deals where there's promoter profit, where they're wanting to earn some money back. So there's also 5,000 plus 50% after expenses, and the promoter gets paid at 15%. So here's the terminology. Break point, break even, kind of interchangeable things. It's your show expenses, both the fixed and the variable, plus the artist fee. All right, that means the artist has gotten their guarantee, meaning hopefully you set your guarantee where you break even on the day or whatever. The venue has paid their expenses. And then there's going to be what comes down later is the overage. The overage is the money then that's left after that break even point. Promoter profit is the percentage of the expenses paid to the promoter in return of their investment. So the industry standard is 15%, and generally this is 15% of the expenses plus the artist fee. So in our example, you'll see it here. The expenses were $9,000. The artist fee is $5,000. So the promoter profit is 15% of all that added up. I don't do math on the spot, so you can figure that out. And you'll see that coming up in here. There's no promoter profit. The break even and split point is the same. So let's look at some math. This is a plus deal with no promoter profit. So it's $5,000 guarantee plus 50% after expenses. Again, some of this, once you understand how this all can be structured, it's math. And you're going to see, again, the same numbers coming in here. Our net are $9,000 of expenses. So if you add this $5,000 is the artist guarantee that you see up here, plus the expenses. So the artist gets paid, the venue expenses are covered. Now we're left with $14,000 as our split point. So anything above that is going to be split. So you see here the overage, you're taking your net minus that $14,000, and that leaves us after our split point of $6,420 overage. Some people look at it as, profit, which it's not truly, but it's overage. So 50% of that is $3,210. So now in this deal, a plus deal, you add it to your guarantee. It's not versus the guarantee, it's added to the guarantee. So you can see your walk is your $5,000 guarantee plus the 50% of overage. So now you're walking with $8,210. Now we get promoter profit in there. So a lot of this is going to be the same math, except the promoter is getting paid before the overage happens. So again, same things, your expenses, your breakpoint, artist guarantee plus the expenses. Now the promoter profit is being calculated off of this $14,000. 15% of 14 is 2010. The promoter is going to get paid before the overage. So now your split point is that 14 plus the promoter profit. So now your split point is at 16,100 in sales. So you're going to have to sell a little bit more to get into your overage. The math on the overage is here. You end up with 4,320, which is essentially 15% less than this example here where there's no promoter profit. That's the only difference. So now 50% of your overage is 2,160, which gets added to your guarantee. So obviously, when the promoter is getting paid 15%, your nut's going to be 15% less in this type of a deal. So why choose a plus deal? Again, you're getting a share. The potential gross is high. If it gets you in the door. And again, you have a guarantee to fall back on here. And if you go over, even if you go over into overages by $500, there's going to be something extra. Versus a versus deal where you got to get to that point where it's going to make sense to take the 85% or whatever it is. So again, things to be mindful of. Expenses obviously add up. Promoter profit involved, take a look at those expenses. You've got a 15% cut going to that promoter. Just be aware of that. Mistakes can be costly, and this type of thing this type of a deal then does include a settlement at the end of show. So you need to see after the show is done what those expenses were, the box offices, and you need to take a look at those as an artist or an artist manager, an agent, whoever's doing your settlement, and make sure those match what you was agreed upon. Sometimes honest mistakes are made, so sometimes they match, sometimes they don't. Also make sure you're aware of when the settlement payment happens. Sometimes venues will do that settlement payment day of show. Other times it's 7 to 10 days after, especially if it's a university or city or a municipality. They can't write checks on the spot. That has to get approved. So as you're doing these deals, be aware of that, certainly. I'm cruising through here, but we'll take questions at the end. And I don't know if anything's in the chat, Jessica, but I figure we'll get through the deals and then we can kind of answer some questions if there are any. Next up is a bonus deal. You get a guarantee plus a bonus at certain benchmarks to be determined, to be mutually agreed upon. This example that we're looking at here, it's 10,000 guarantee plus, as you can see, an extra 2,500 at 800 tickets sold and an extra 2,500 at sellout. These can be different ways of doing the tickets, different ticket price points or gross points, all different things. It doesn't have to be, it could be your first bonus could be at 100 tickets sold. It all depends on, how the venue feels on the risk and how big of a guarantee you have. So this first example, okay, these are pretty straightforward. You don't have to worry about expenses and stuff. It's a $10,000 guarantee plus the $2,500 bonuses at both places. So if you sell out, you make $15,000. If you sell 800 plus tickets, you're making $12,500. Again, it's just simple ways to add a little bit to what you can earn. If you sell well, you share in the success as an artist. And you don't have to worry about expenses. You don't have to worry about settlements. What you do have to worry about here is the terminology and making sure it's, is this ticket sold? Is it gross ticket revenue? Is it, how many comps are the venue giving out? Like, what is sellout? Does sellout include the comps? Is 996 considered a sellout because you have 4 comps in there? Like, being aware of all of that is important because it affects your potential income. Also, if an artist is at before a show. In this type of a case, say they've sold 795 tickets. Well, I want that artist to be aware of where those sales are pre-show because it's going to be worth it for them to go buy 5 tickets to reach that 800 ticket plateau and get $2,500 more. You don't want to walk out and look at that ticket report and be like, I was 2 tickets short. So if you're doing these things, know your where things are at. So, kind of went over some of this. No stress at settlement. You don't need to worry about expenses. It's just get a ticket report. You make more if you sell more. You getting sharing in the success, sharing in the risk, type of a thing. A lot of times, this does work well when there's season ticket subscriptions sold because those, again, the different ticket pricing affects your potential net. So those are pretty much the various deals. A bonus deal, a versus deal, a plus deal, and a door deal. Um, there's lots of negotiation that can happen within those deals, percentage wise, expense wise. So it's just a matter of understanding the structure of the deal you want, maybe suggesting an alternative structure. And really, the goal is to partner with these venues to get them and you in a comfortable place to get you in the door. Eliminate the roadblocks, eliminate some of the risk, as we all know recently with the NEA funding and everything going away and all this stuff. It's becoming I've never done more of these split deals, bonus, anything other than a guarantee in my entire career than I have within the last 5 years because I'm trying to get artists in the door as much as possible. And that means minimizing risks, which does put some risk on the artist and the agent and puts the onus on them to, capitalize on their ability to sell tickets. So happy to answer questions people have about different things, different deals. I suppose I'll keep screen sharing in case someone wants to go back to one of these.
Yeah, Kevin, this was just fantastic. This is definitely one of those presentations that I think we all wish we would have known 10 years ago. um,
I would have, yeah, absolutely. I didn't know this for a long time. All of a sudden, I
yeah.
was like, huh.
Yeah, no, this was wonderful. I mean, coming from somebody who was an agent prior to my days with OAPN. So before I open up to questions, because I know that there will be a lot. First off, Tammy did ask, can you share this deck with
Yeah.
everybody? Okay. So what we'll do is once we upload the video to YouTube, we'll send out that link along with the deck to everybody who registered for the call today. Um, First question for you though, and then we'll open it up. Can you describe one of your worst door deal experiences and what you learned from that moving forward?
hmm Um, I don't think I haven't done a ton of door deals because my artists like to get guarantees on the road. But and I really haven't had a bad door deal experience because I did them after I learned how to do them. So, and with the artists that are able to do it, I'll give an example of one that just happened on Friday. It was a comedian of mine who was performing in St. Cloud, which is his hometown. And he always sells well. And in past years, we used to always do a guarantee from the venue. He's been performing there for 20 years every year. And when I got on board, I was like, why are you doing this as a guarantee? Like, let's do a door deal here from $1. You're gonna make so much more money. You're gonna sell. He sold almost 600 tickets and walked out. I think it was like over $10,000. I think was probably around his walkout. His guaranteed fees were around 3,000. You know, so it's like sometimes you don't realize it. That's why these especially in markets you have that built-in audience. Those things can add up fast. And if obviously the more he makes, the more I make. The
Right,
more the agency makes, and the venue's happy too. Because they're making a lot off of it.
right.
So, yeah, I haven't had a disaster door deal. I mean, some of my artists have done them on their own, and the big risk is the shows get canceled, and then everyone's out because of low ticket sales. Nobody wants to have that in there. So, um, I would hope on a door deal, an artist is very motivated to help in the marketing. That's a big part of it. And there are the loud geese flying by.
No, this is great. Does anybody want to ask a question? Yes, Tammy.
Myself. So I recently started working with a local theater. Um, it's new for me to be in a position where I can work these kinds of deals. It's a very, very small theater. It's 130 to 150 seats. So it's very small. It's a 1928 theater. In fact, it was the movie theater here in my hometown when I was a kid. I worked there in the concession stand, but now it's a restaurant slash venue where they're having live music. And sometimes part of the deal that they offer to performers or to the guests that buy tickets is a meal.
Hmm.
So, how do you work in the expense of the meal that people are getting in addition to the ticket for the show?
So it's like a almost like a dinner theater type of thing.
Basically, it's like, some of the
Yeah,
shows it comes with a dinner, and some of
right.
them it's just a ticket for the performance.
So I would look at that kind of as like a VIP add-on package.
Mm-hmm.
I've had them where it's a little bit different because there's real hard expense in those meals, so
Yes.
it's like uh, I don't know, the venue would need to do that. You'd have to figure out what the meal expense is and what type of overage I guess there is on the ticket pricing. But like on VIP packages, of if the venue sells a upsell like that, I always try and get a percentage to the artist. So I just did a deal with a venue in Georgia where the artist received 50% of the VIP ticket sales.
Okay.
So, and it's a separate tier. So, but they don't have a ton of expense. They're just providing the opportunity. So, in this situation, obviously there's the expense of the meals and tips and catering and all that stuff. So it could be a little bit trickier, but that's probably how I would, or just do a
Okay.
door deal because it adds to the gross. I would include the
That's kind
dinner
of what I
fee.
yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking is like doing a door deal. I'll save you the backstory of this place, but they've really been through a lot. In a
Hmm.
nutshell, the previous owner was embezzling money from them, and they had sold tickets to various events through Eventbrite or something like that, and he took the money. So now they're paying for these people out of pocket because the previous owner took all the money.
Yeah, that's a
So
shame.
so I'm trying to think of ways to get the entertainment in there and make them feel good about the situation and making and recouping some of the money that they've lost without me losing my ass in the process. You know?
Exactly. It's tricky in a small venue, have a lot of money to
Yes.
play with,
Yes.
at all in there. So yeah, I guess I would try and look at, what their meal costs truly are. And, that way that's covered. Because if you're taking a door deal off the whole thing and maybe they're not making as much as they could, like
Hmm.
yeah, it's a tricky one.
Yeah. I like the idea of the VIP pricing though, because then that way, if somebody's just buying a ticket for the show, that's completely different than a VIP package where they get a meal. So
Right.
that might be a better situation for these folks.
Hmm.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Are there any other questions?
Yeah, I've got a question or two. Thanks again, Kevin.
Hmm.
Wondering like what's the most common, so like do you see these alternative types of deals at a certain price point become more common? Is it like, oh, when a show is above, say, a 3,500 or 4,000, this is more common, or is it just at all tiers? Like, because in my own experience, obviously just with my own piano show, it was usually a guarantee, although I had a couple of these kind of like the bonus things you were talking about. But I wondered, is it more
Right.
common, say, with like a big tribute band that, instead of fronting the 12K, they want a 5K guarantee, and like that example you had?
Yeah, no, it's certainly more common in the commercial acts, and it's more common in larger theaters just because there's more money to go around. Like in the example that Tammy was talking about, or even in a 200, 300 seat theater, by the time their expenses are covered, there's just not a lot of money to split. Um, you know, um, So it does work better in the larger venues. Thought probably 1,000 seats, I would say. I've done them in the 800 seat, 500 seat place, but again, it's minimal. Generally, if I'm doing that, first of all, it's a bonus deal based on ticket sales, not like some percentage. So because again, the venue knows if I sell 100 tickets, I'm making this much money. I can afford to give that much to the artist. So I've had deals where it's like $5,000 guarantee and then an extra 500 at 100, 200, 300, 400, 500. Like literally every 100 seats
Okay.
there's a little bit more to the artist.
But you don't see it too
So
much in like a 200 and 300 seat venue, like these smaller venues, you don't see it as often.
not as often because again, there's just not as much gross potential there to share. Those would be places where I would bank on a door deal. Again, giving you a chance to make more. But as an artist and an agent, we understand the venues need to operate, the venues need to make money. We also understand they make money in their concessions and they make money in other places as well. So it's really just it's about sharing in the success of your show. Was what it comes down to. But again, there's only a finite pot of money there
Right.
to take your expenses from. So a show like yours, Jason, I do know your show. I've seen you showcase at places. It's going to be harder
Right.
for these types of deals. Like I would, but who knows? You know?
Yeah, I mean, it's just interesting listening to this because I've had some presenters where this was not deals I did, this was with my previous
Hmm.
agent was with Charlie Ray, and like,
Hmm.
they'd pay more than the gross. And I don't know how he, gross potential. I don't know how he got that, but like, I mean, I'd had venues pay 5 grand for my show where their ticket sales even, and they were like, oh, we're very happy with this ticket sales was $1,500. I'm just thinking, well, how does this make
Yeah.
any sense? Because
Well,
they're
it's
not just paying my fee. I mean, they're taking a huge bath, but they'd be like, oh, we loved it. We're so happy. And I'm like,
So that goes back to kind of the mission-based programming and stuff that
I-
these venues are doing. They know they're going to lose money on shows. They know that they're okay with that because they need to provide that art to those to their patrons. But that's why
yeah,
Broadway reigns supreme. That's why we have to wait for Broadway to settle and then move and then settle and then move and then settle and move and then settle and move and then settle and move their dates until it's settled. And then we can finally that's I mean, Broadway rules the venue calendars because that's
gotcha.
where they make their money that they can
Yeah,
lose $5,000. I hate to say the word lose, but they can invest $5,000 in bringing Jason Lyle Black to provide his entertainment to, the the community there.
sure. Well, like I said, one of the acts I'm working with is now next year is a tribute band, and so obviously a much more
Hmm.
commercial kind of sales potential. So I'm wanting to understand all the different options because that's
Yep.
obviously an easier sell than a piano show.
Right. Right.
Mhm. Thank you for these questions. We did see some questions in the chat, and so the first question is a two-part question. Number one, how often are you, Kevin? Oops, it just moved on me. I'm sorry. How often are you, as the agent, educating venue buyers on creative deal making?
Often. Often. Um, Way more, and there's nothing wrong with that. Again, we're all learning on different ways of doing this stuff. I think especially again, even before COVID, I started seeing a change, but it's no longer us versus them type of thing. Obviously, we need to work together and share in all of this. The venues, of course, they want to make money, but the artists want to make money too. And I feel like a lot of times the artists were seeing like, whoa, they started doing the math when they saw the ticket price plus the number of tickets they're selling. Like, why am I only making this small percentage? But this is where as much as I have to educate the buyers, I'm also educating the artists because they have no clue that it's going to cost $20,000 for that theater to even open the door. They are starting $20,000 in the hole. And a lot of artists don't realize that either. So that's where these sessions have been really eye-opening. I think for some artists have never seen a budget of a venue, like, and when they come through in an offer. So yeah, I am. And in fact, in next month, I'm going down to the Southwest presenters and doing this exact session. Because as a presenters consortium, they want to learn more as well.
Great. Part two of this question was, will you walk through a typical settlement when it happens after the show? What documents are typical? What's provided? What are you looking at? What are you looking for?
Yep, I thought about this and I should have had something prepared without specific artist information on, but typically, you get your offer, it's going to have a full budget of things. Let me see if I can see quickly if I can pull up an offer here to share, but it'll have the budget of what was the show was built off of and what it's going to look like. I don't think I have any settlements handy, but I can at least show an offer here. Um and here we go. And then what you'll see is the actual expenses. So it's a very similar thing from what's budgeted, and it will be actual. So I think this is, let me just make sure this is safe to share without any sort of secretive information since it's being recorded. Hopefully I don't get in trouble. Okay.
You don't have to feel obligated to
No,
share anything if you don't want. Okay.
no, I think it's good. So this is for a multi-day, multiple performance thing at a venue. So you can see, there's rent in there. These are the fixed expenses, things like that. Credit cards is going to be variable expenses. So you're going to get basically this from the venue that's going to have actual, again, these are estimates. So you're going to get it what the actual expenses was. Sometimes it looks in the same form like this. Other times it looks completely different, just a simple budget spreadsheet. But you want to have the budget like this document here is attached to my contract. So this is contractually, all the expenses that we agreed upon. So if the venue is finding that they're going to go over hospitality, they cannot go over that $1,500 unless it is approved by me and the artist to go over that. If they come in under budget, it's just more to share. So this type of deal, you can see this was a 15% promoter profit. It is a there's a guarantee plus percentage. So my artist is getting 85%. So you can see at the bottom, artist gets 85%, promoter gets 15% of the overages there. So this type of a deal, it's a small guarantee, but the walkout for my artist is big. Because again, it's a hometown type of deal. So you'll see something like this in there at the end of the day. Much like a box office report too, that shows the sales and things like that. So that's generally what happens. Merchandise is handled separately. That's not obviously part of your budget and a deal that you're creating ahead of time.
So can I ask, when you're looking at those budget lines, are you asking for their receipts for hospitality? Are you trying to make sure everything aligns?
I mean, you can go ask for the specific receipts. I think that's where there's a trust factor in there. If numbers seem close, great. If numbers don't seem right, ask the question. Ask for it. And this is a lot of time why settlement payments don't come the day of that night. Because there could be questions, there could be additional things. Sometimes you can ask for a pre-show settlement. So they will, if you want to have a check there, they might need 3 days or 5 days before, whatever it takes them to run that check. They can do a pre-show settlement. So it's a settlement based on the numbers where they are that day. So you can get a percentage of your overage if you need to. Those types of things happen.
Okay. Well, and you mentioned merchandise. I think everybody's familiar with the merchandise splits, but do you have recommendations on how you handle those? I'm familiar with the 90-10, 80-20. How do you approach that?
I try to get them to 100% to the artist as often as possible. Um, some venues just will not negotiate on that. So it is what it is. Sometimes instead of 15%, I try and know what my artists are selling or ask them. Sometimes it's better just to offer. We'll tell you what, instead of a percentage, how about you sell and we'll pay your buyer $150?
Mm.
And sometimes that works, offering an alternative. Sometimes just asking also, they just put it on there because it's preloaded, pre-filled into their document. It's the default, whatever, in their offer. And if they don't ask, I mean, I've I've had it reduced or eliminated just simply by asking.
Cool.
or I've
Great.
been told
Well,
not possible.
well, we're down to the last few minutes here. Are there any other questions while we have Kevin face to face? There's a lot here. I know there's a lot more
Yes.
to unpack and unload with your presentation. So thank you again for hosting this. I know
Yeah.
that usually when you're doing these in person, you usually have a little bit more than an hour, and we hope to have you back at our 2026 conference as well.
Yeah.
So save the date for those on this call. That's October 18th through 20th, 2026 in Hamilton, Ohio. Kevin, yeah, is there anything you want to end this Tuesday talks with?
I don't think so. Hope everyone had a great Cinco de Mayo. And no, I look forward to seeing people in Hamilton for that conference. I'm excited to see OAPN again after their year off, as you know, the off years, the odd years. So it'll be fun. Ohio has treated me well.
That's great. Well, and then do a little small shout out to Napama. A handful of us from the
Yep.
OAPN board are going to be at the retreat. If you want to just give a quick shout out on where to buy tickets and the dates,
Yeah, retreats. You can register on the website. As of
which is
today,
napama.org.
yeah, no, napama.org. As of today, I forgot to take off the option of early bird registration, so it's still there. It was, oops, clerical error. Anyway, well, that'll be going off soon, but you can register there. It's in Wilmington, North Carolina, June 1 through 3. It's a great opportunity. As agents and artists, in particular, we don't get to do the professional development at the conferences. It's a lot of times focused to the venues, or we're in meetings or sound checks and stuff like that. So the purpose of the retreat is supposed to be a place for agents, artists, and presenters to relax, first of all, connect with people, and have some professional development that's a little more driven towards agents and artists. So look forward to seeing people there. If you're not Napama members, you don't have to be to go to the retreat, but I highly recommend becoming a part of the organization. It's a great organization to be a part of.
Wonderful. Again, thank you everybody for joining us. Kevin, thank you for being such a wonderful host and providing such
You bet.
great information. We will see everybody soon.
Great.
Take
Thanks.
care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.